So these are my disclosures.
Хотя пусть у нас есть хотя бы. Нас. Тогда уберите наш. Нас тоже не видим.
And I'm putting a short movie. I don't know if you can see it. Do you see it?
Yes, we can see.
Good. You don't need the sound. This is a little clip that was broadcast in BBC 25 years ago in prime time at 8 o'clock p.m. in order to prevent suicide in young people. You can see a person with a suitcase on the roof and a young person coming to him very closely. Boom. 3 men are killed in Britain every day. But nothing happens. You can see that the young person walking away and the old person is surprised. But then look at his face. The young person in the middle jumping to his death, committing suicide. You can help stop suicide, and they are giving you a number. This was supposed to prevent suicide, but unfortunately, this little clip caused lots of suicide in UK. In the same week they put it, lots of people committed suicide in the same way from jumping from roofs. This other clip that you can see now was made in Israel. You can see an adolescent ringing a bell, calling for help. Nobody's listening. Can you hear? They write, can you hear? And then they put the bell, giving a clue that someone committed the suicide, and giving a number, a free toll number that you can call. The other clip was very successful. We tried it and we analyzed this, and it prevented some suicides. The first clip was very, very dangerous. So let me say a few words about the phenomena. Every year, about 1 million people worldwide are dying from suicide. Much, much, much more than people die from corona. Look how much money and how big is the impact of corona, while suicide is actually killing many, many more people. Only in larger Europe, including Russia, 150,000 people are dying every year. In the EU countries, 65,000. 25% of them are below age 24. Males are committing suicide 5 times more than females, and attempts are very common, mainly with females. When you look on the map of the world, and I put this especially for you, this is not new. It's from WHO 2015, but it's still true today. These are the rates per 100,000 population of suicides. So if you have a white color, you have 5 per 100,000 population suicides a year. If you're dark red, it's above 15. So you can see that Russia, all the Soviet Union, is very dark. Actually, is the most dangerous place for suicide. Same is Africa, some places in India, and some places in South America. China is very low, but it's not because there are no suicides there, but because they don't report their suicides. It seems like China has lots of suicide, and females are committing suicide almost like male. Remember that until age 24 in young people, this is the first leading cause of death all over the world. It's very rare to see suicides before puberty, but the age of onset is going down, and the average cost of every suicide is 2,800,000 Australian dollars. Someone calculated, because if you commit suicide, you actually cause lots of days of work loss to you and your family. This is the US. Look what happened in 10 years. In children from 10 to 17, the rates of suicide raised by 70%, and this is dramatic. One of the explanations is that actually the Americans stopped giving SSRIs to adolescents due to the black box warning, and that's why it became so prevalent. The early onset is also a very important point, and it seemed more and more every year. So this is from BMJ, British Medical Journal, in 2012. This is showing that the past decade, suicide between 10 to 14 raised 3 times more, from 0.5 to 1.5 per 100,000. This means that suicides in young children tripled itself. And you can see down here, a child at 9 years old, they committed suicide after he played in the WhatsApp, in a game called Momo WhatsApp. It's a suicide challenge. They see frightening dolls, they play with it, and then they get missions. Stand on one leg, wake your parents at 4 a.m., and then kill yourself. And they did. When we talk about suicide or self-harm, this is the tip of the iceberg. Many, many adolescents are harming themselves in the community, and we are not even knowing about it. They don't tell their parents, they don't tell their physician, they don't tell their teacher. They cut themselves, they make scratches. We don't know about them. We know about those above the sea level with self-harm that come to clinical service, and of course, the suicides. This is very important paper. It came out in 2017 by a psychologist called Wenge, and you can see that it's a Thomas Joyner group from the US. They screened 500,000 adolescents. This is the largest study ever done by adolescents, on adolescents in the world. And they assessed the number of hours every adolescent is in the cellular, like some of you do now. How much time you are invested in your cellular phone comparing to the percentage of at least one suicide risk factor. And look here, if you have 1 hour in your screen, it's okay. If you have 2 hours, it's bad. 4 hours, even more bad. But if, and most of us do more than 5 hours, if an adolescent between age 9, grade 9 and grade 12, which is between 10 and 17, is in the web more than 5 hours a day, 50% of them will have suicide ideation or attempts. 50% of them will have at least one suicide risk factor and behavior. This is frightening. It means that being in social media too much for adolescents is dangerous. We don't know if it's because you are depressed, you're more in the website or social media, or vice versa. But this is a correlation, and we have to think about it. The definition of suicidality is the act of self-harm with at least partial intent to die. The intent is important. And one of the rating scales is by Kelly Posner, CSSRS, Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. This one was translated into Russian and 80 other languages. So you can use it, you can find a manual. If you use it for academic use, it's free. If you use it for commercial use, you need to pay. We have now the spectrum theory. We move from ideation to attempt. Attempt can be aborted or disrupted and can be completed. Ideation is very common. Suicide is very rare. I want to explain this. Many adolescents, if you talk to them, will tell you, I think about suicide. From time to time, I struggle with the idea. And this is very common. It's similar to thinking about murder. When I came here today, someone took my spot in the parking lot. I am the director of the hospital and I don't have a parking spot. When I knew who is the guy who took it, I had murderous thoughts. I want to kill him. Of course, thinking about it and actually kill him is a very long way. And you understand this. We think about something, but actually starting to do it, or even doing a gesture, taking a knife or a stick and coming to him, doing nothing, just coming to him, it's very extreme behavior. So the same is with suicide. Ideation is common. Most of the ideators will never attempt and do anything, and it's not dangerous. Once you move from ideation to doing something, you are dangerous. It's important to remember that 90% of suicide victims suffers from mental disorders. 60% of them met their primary care physician in a month before the suicide. This was published in a JAMA in 2005 by John Mann, my mentor and teacher from New York, from Columbia University. So important to understand that many of the victims suffer from mental disorder, and some of them will see their doctors. Should we ask about suicide? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Asking about suicide is safe. It's not dangerous. Mehdi Gould from Columbia University, New York, have published in JAMA 2006 and showed over thousands of adolescents. Asking, are you suicidal, is not dangerous. The opposite is true. If you don't ask, they are very anxious, they stay with their thoughts, and they are dangerous to themselves. If you ask, they don't think about suicide, it's nothing. They don't care. If they think about suicide, they will thank you, they will confess, and you can treat them. This is from David Schaffer from New York. He summarized 4 big studies. One of them is from Israel, one from New York, Finland, and Pittsburgh. All of them on adolescents. Post-mortem psychological autopsy that have shown that 90% of adolescents that committed suicide suffered from psychopathology. They are not healthy kids. Normal kids don't kill themselves even if they are humiliated or have problems. And most of them will be depressed. This is the most common model by John Mann, published in JAMA. In order for adolescents to commit suicide, they need to have both mood or other psychiatric disorder. It can be schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, even autism and mental retardation, and stressful life event, something negative that happened to them. If you have the combination of mood disorder and stressful life event, you will have suicide ideation. Ideation will turn into act if you have these factors like impulsivity, hopelessness and pessimism, access to guns or little means, and imitation. This is the most common model for suicidal act in young people. This is our model, a psychological model done by Nachliel and others. We published this in 2014. We have shown that the most important part is mental pain. It's not just depression. It's feeling pain, mental pain. And it's important because people with mental pain will be with suicidal tendency. And it seemed like even loss of friends, loss of status, loss of money, loss of dignity is important in suicide. Self-destruction behavior and personality is important. But when you do path analysis, they all go through presence of mental pain. Before I go back to clinic, I want you to stop for a minute and give you a minute to ask some questions if you want. So I'll take off the slides.
Окей, коллеги, можно задать вопросы профессору Зальцману, если у вас есть вопросы сейчас.
Do you see me now?
No, they still have not written any questions in our chat, so I think that you can continue.
Okay, so I'll go on.
You can see their questions. Yes, you can see them, and right now you see that our chat is empty and there is no any question. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we are going now to clinic, because after all, even if we are researchers, we are clinicians. Do you see the slide?
Yes, we can see.
Good. So first of all, as child psychiatrists and people that work in research in child psychiatry, it's important for me to tell you that when you interview an adolescent about its suicidality, the information is limited. And you have to understand this, the information is limited. We did a big study in Israel, and we have shown that there is low agreement with parents on suicidality. It means that if you ask an adolescent and his mother about his suicidality, the mother will say, yes, he's very suicidal. The child say, no way. And the other way around. The child will say, I'm suicidal, and the mother will not know. So the agreement, we call it agreement, between parents and children about suicidality is 40%. This means you need to interview the child separately and the parent separately in order to do a meaningful clinical evaluation and a meaningful research on depression and suicidality. In sometimes I thought using the European Union funds and to have an application that will help suicidal people to get help. It will be like a little red button in application in the cellular, and I thought that if they are standing on a bridge and want to kill themselves, they will push the button, and then this will call 2 significant other people and tell them your friend is on the bridge in this and this location, go save him. And on the same time, the person who touch the button will have a map with all the ER around him. This looks like a very good idea, but before they gave me the money, they say, please check if it's true. We think people will not push the button. So we did. We took these people, we put them in groups, and we asked them, people with suicidal thoughts, are you going to push the button in this application that will call two significant others? And the answer I got was very surprising. All of them said, we will push the button. Even if we stand on a bridge, and we did in our life, we are struggling. We are not sure we want to jump. So we will push the button. But our main problem is, and this surprised me very much, our main problem is we don't have two numbers to put in because we don't have two significant others. If we had two significant others, we will not standing on a bridge. And this make me understand that actually the real problem of the adolescent that want to kill themselves is loneliness. And they feel they are alone in the world. And I'm saying here subjective loneliness because it's not real loneliness. You can have 5,000 followers in the Facebook or 10,000 followers in the Instagram and still feel very lonely. You can have very warm family, very loving family, and still feel very lonely. And if you talk to adolescents, you talk to children, sometimes they have subjective loneliness that is much stronger than what you think. This is a drawing that adolescent from my department drew before she killed herself. I think if you look, she's very talented, of course, and you can see how beautiful it is. But you can also see the loneliness shouting outside. It says that even though we are in an era of social media, we are all connected, we can feel very isolated. And remember that in Corona times, it's even stronger. We are not allowed to kiss, we are not allowed to hug, we have to distance ourselves from each other 2 meters. It's very uncomfortable. I'm sure Vova, our technician that had to set all this arrangement here, felt uncomfortable that I couldn't stand close to him, and whenever he approached me, I had to put a mask and wash my hands. It gives you very bad feeling, and we feel distant from each other. But this is the only way to win this war. This is the only way to protect each other. We have to protect each other. When you wash your hands, you protect the other people. Yet, it feels lonely, and we have to think about it. Another paper I published many years ago, 20 years ago, in Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in the US, what we call the Orange Journal, the leading journal in child psychiatry, that I suggest strongly for everybody of you to read it every month. This is the best source of information. Most of my knowledge is taken from there. This is very updated journal, the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the Orange Journal. So this paper tried to assess human figure drawing to evaluate severe adolescent suicidal behavior and depression. And it's interesting because we have found that this little test, which is very cheap, it's very effective in finding suicidal thoughts. So you have here 3 adolescents from my department. I'm still seeing patients every day, and we have patients in our department. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. One of them is OCD patient with no suicidal thoughts. One of them is depressed adolescents with severe suicidal thoughts. And the third is psychotic adolescent that killed himself. And I'm asking you to think now, which one is which. You can talk to the friend nearby you and try to vote. Who is the non-suicidal, who is the attempters, and who is the completer? I can give you a clue that we found in our study that the neck area is very important. The neck area can give you a lot of information. And although human figure drawing is not valid and reliable, this little sign, using the rating scale by Cynthia Pfeffer, a suicidologist from the US, from Cornell, have shown that the lines in the neck are very important. If the lines are not steady, it's dangerous. If you have necklace or other drawings on the neck, it's dangerous. So this is the answer. The right one is a non-attempter. It's OCD patient with no attempt. You can see the lines of the neck are very nice. The left one is an attempter. You see the lines are not steady. So he's not steady in the neck. And the middle one is psychotic patients that committed suicide. So this is how a little test with pencil and paper can help assess suicidality. There is a big portion of patients, especially females, that are not that are hurting themselves, but they don't want to kill themselves. We call this NSSI, non-suicidal self-injury. And NSSI is a behavior common, especially in borderline personality disorder females in adolescence. They will hurt themselves, but they have no intent to die. This is the main difference between NSSI and suicide attempt. DSM-5 declared that suicide attempt is a self-injury with at least partial intent to die. NSSI is a self-injury with no intent to die, zero intent to die, not even 1% intent to die. When an adolescent girl cut herself, she wants to relieve the pain, the mental pain. That's what she really wants to do. You can see here also that the DBT is a very good, effective treatment, dialectical behavioral therapy, read about it, and that inpatient setting is questionable. It's not sure that it's a good idea to put a girl that just cut herself and have no intent to die into an inpatient setting. This may cause others to start doing the same behavior. We thought for years that these girls are not dangerous. They cut themselves with no intent to die. But recently, a paper in 2017 in our Journal of Suicide and Life-Threatening Behavior have shown by Barbara Stanley and others from Columbia University in New York that if during adolescence you do NSSI and you have also mood disorder, the risk that you will do a suicide attempt is 2 times more. The hazard ratio is 2, meaning adolescents with NSSI are not dangerous, but if they have also comorbid depression, then they can kill themselves. So you have to teach all your personnel. NSSI with depression is dangerous. This came out in pediatrics in 2018 by Mark Olfson, and you can see this is a cumulative probability of repeated self-harm. And you can see here, the more times going by, like 1 year, adolescents and young adults that cut themselves will do it again. So once you cut yourself, you will probably repeat it again and again. But more frightening is this graph that shows cumulative probability of suicide per 100 patients. This is the number of patients that will kill themselves within a year. And you can see that in adolescents, young adults, if you start cutting yourself, NSSI, and you have comorbid depression, within a year, about 16% of young adults and 12% of adolescents will kill themselves. This is exactly like depression, so we have to be careful. This is a study we have done in high schools in Israel, 70 high school students. We published this in European Psychiatry 2016, and we tried to do a psychological autopsy after 70 adolescents killed themselves during 1 decade. And we interviewed the family and the patients, and we found this typical profile of adolescent in Israel that killed themselves. I'm sure in Russia it's the same. First of all, most of them are males, of course, as expected. They come from low socioeconomic states. They have low grade in school. They have problems in school. The counselor knew them. They didn't declare suicide risk, but they have truancy. Truancy means that you don't stay at school. You stay at home. You don't come to school for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. This is dangerous, and we have to pick them. This is a good screening tool. However, now with Corona time, everybody is at home, and we can't use it as a tool. Another point is most of these kids will have 4 negative life events, which is a lot. And in half of them, peer group knew that they are going to kill themselves, which means this is really, really bad. The most important part here is that if a friend knows that you are going to kill yourself, he can tell someone. And we go to these kids and ask them, why don't you tell us? Why don't you go to parents and teachers? And they replied, we didn't want to tell. To tell is also to go behind the back in English. We didn't want to tell the parents because it's not loyal. I promised my friend I will never tell anyone. And this is, of course, very frightening. So after our paper, the Americans came out with a big campaign by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Tell someone. Encourage, ask for help, and listen. They tell young kids, learn to talk to your parents and tell them. If we don't have any questions, I'll move now to risk assessment, which is very practical and clinical part that will help you to assess the risk of suicide. So first of all, this is a list of risk factors, but they can be accumulative. If you have more than one, you're more dangerous. And I underlined for you the 4 most important ones. Being male is a major risk factor. Of course, it's not helpful because half of the population is males. Previous suicide attempt is very important. However, half of the adolescents, males that will kill themselves, never did an attempt. They actually killed themselves immediately and didn't have an attempt. Psychopathology, especially depression, is a very important factor. In our clinics, everybody has psychopathology. And early and untreated depression is a very important factor. Other factors are stressors, living alone, no support system, immigration, humiliation is a very strong one, bullying and cyberbullying. Bullying is very important. Anat Klomek from Israel has published in Lancet Psychiatry and also in the Orange Journal that the bullying victims and the bullies both are at risk for suicide. If you hit someone, others will humiliate you and you will be at risk as well. Other risk factors: aggression, substance abuse, cigarette smoking, problems with the law, problems in school, genetics, and we have shown by our studies using animal model that actually in depression and suicide, mainly depression, the most important is the genetics, the environment, and the timing. This is gene, environment, timing interaction. And this means that it's not enough to have the gene for depression in your family. You need to have a stressful life event. And another point that we added, the stressful life event has to happen in an early development, window of development. We have shown that the brains of mice and rats is very sensitive in their first 28 days of development, which is corresponding to 5 years of development in children. If you have depression, if you have stress, depression in the family, and stress during childhood, you will be adult with depression and suicidality. We published this data. It's also in the Kaplan and Sadok synopsis of psychiatry. It's in the reference, so you can read the paper. It's in the reference of the chapter on depression in children and adolescents. We know also that other risk factors are hopelessness, despair, helplessness, insight. We have published a paper in 2006 showing that adolescents with schizophrenia, if they have high insight that they have schizophrenia, they will be more depressed, 50% will be depressed, and some of them will kill themselves. Poor decision making, state post sexual abuse, again, early in development. Remember the timing is everything. Unclear gender identity. If a child or an adolescent doesn't know if he's a boy or a girl, they struggle with their identity, they're very dangerous. Once they decide and declare it, they're safe. Masked sexual preference. If a child doesn't know if he's homosexual or not, or lesbian, once they know and they declare it and they go out of the closet, as we say, they will be safe. Current suicidal ideation and intent, unemployment, which is unfortunately very important now because due to the coronavirus, even in the US, the most stable economy in the world, they have 20% unemployment in a few months. And the corona will make very many people unemployed and the danger will go up. Perfectionism and narcissism. We have published a paper showing that kids with narcissism and perfectionism are more dangerous. Poor self-disclosure. We have shown that children, especially boys, this is one of our explanations why boys commit suicide more than girls. They don't talk about their problems. They are more aggressive. They use more aggressive means, but they also don't talk about their problems. And mimicking clusters. This is very important. We have now a cluster in one of our hospitals in the south. 4 medical doctors killed themselves within 1.5 years. This is a real mimicking cluster, as we call it, a Werther phenomena, after Goethe paper or book on Werther that killed himself. Many young people in the 18th century killed themselves, so we call it the Werther effect. And remember, all the risk factors are additive. When you look on a risk factor, so there are, of course, statistical help for us. It's not really helping us to say who will kill themselves. It's good for risk assessment. And remember that previous suicide attempt is very strong, powerful predictor for future suicide, but 50% of the males will not do suicide attempt. The killing will be the first suicide attempt. So if you look here, and this is a little exercise you can do with yourself later, I give you two adolescents. Dan is 17 years old. Sarah is 16 years old. And you can read about Dan, about his story. You can read about Sarah. And I'm asking you a very simple question. In your adolescent inpatient service, you can put only one of them. You have one free bed. Who is more dangerous? Take a moment, read it, and then decide and have a discussion between you. We're not doing it now. You will do it later between yourself. You can put the presentation back again for yourself and decide, or you can take a photo of the screen now and try to do the assessment using my risk assessment list. Who is more dangerous, Dan or Sarah?
Sarah.
Oh,
Yes.
if you do a real discussion, you'll find out it's not so simple as it seemed. Okay? So do the discussion with yourself later. And if you want, I will write you an email telling you the right answer. But now I'm not telling you the right answer because I don't care about the right answer. I care about the discussion. I want you to discuss it and exercise the risk factor assessment.
Okay.
Let's say a few words about treatment. So first of all, you can see here in this slide resources you can use. The book on the right, Suicidal Behavior in Adolescents, it's a book I wrote together with Yoav Merrick, Professor Yoav Merrick. It's a very old one, but it's still very good, useful. The middle one is Clinics of North America. You can still buy it online by Amazon and other sources. It's the Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Clinics of North America. It's a little book. Every year they publish like 10 books, each one of different topic. The one in the middle is about depression in children and adolescents, and I wrote it with David Brandt, #1 expert in the world from Pittsburgh University in Philadelphia, and he's a world expert in depression treatment, and there are lots of papers by us and others. It's a group of papers that I really recommend. All of them are online. You can read them online. And the wonderful book of David Brandt and Pauling and Goldstein is about treating depressed and adolescents, suicidal adolescents. And it's also, you can buy it online. These are actually the rules for this treatment: close observation, safe environment, no knives, no paracetamol, no drugs, no high buildings, put bars on the window and so on, and make a safety plan. Make a good therapeutic alliance. Some adolescents will stay alive only because they promised you they will not kill themselves. Aggressive treatment of depression, we'll talk about it later. Lithium, clozapine, ECT, and S-ketamine. Lithium was proven to be a very good, effective treatment for suicidality in adolescents. And we highly recommend to use it above age 16. If there is bipolar, it was proven for bipolar. It wasn't proven for other problems, but some people think they are. Clozapine, Leponex is actually the only therapy that was proven for suicidal adolescents and adults as a therapy for suicidality. ECT wasn't proven so good, and we'll say a few words about it later. And S-ketamine, that I will talk in a few minutes and show you how it works. So S-ketamine wasn't approved by FDA yet for suicidality, but it was proven for depression, and in some countries also for adolescents. And there is a large multicentric study now adolescent for esketamine. Esketamine is a first aid. You give it and immediately the suicidality and depression goes away. CBT for adolescents, it's a special version for adolescents. IPT, interpersonal therapy for adolescents. DBT for adolescents. Family therapy. Web treatment, and you can read a very good review in Hetrick paper in 2017 about it, and write everything in the files. Never forget to ask about suicide and write it down, because once an adolescent commits suicide, not because of you, simply because of his depression, the parents may sue you in court, and you need to record everything for your own safety. So we are going now to talk a little about psychopharmacology for suicidality and depression in adolescents. So first of all, SSRIs. As you know, in 2014, I was in New York, and at that time, we were part of a huge study trying to see if SSRIs are causing suicide in adolescents. And I can tell you very strongly, and you can read the TADS study, it's a classical study in the archives in 2007, the treatment for adolescents with depression study, they have shown it's not really dangerous. Actually, it's saving lives. You need to give SSRIs to adolescents with depression. And it's not dangerous, and large-scale ecological studies have shown it's not associated with increased risk of suicide. But giving it will prevent suicide. So give SSRIs to adolescents. Don't think twice. The best SSRI is probably fluoxetine, Prozac, 20 milligrams in the morning. And if it's not working after a month, go to 40, because adolescents are rapid metabolizers. They need high doses. Lithium, as I said, it's with mechanism unknown. It's not approved for children, but it's a strong evidence that in RCT that it's effective in reducing risk of suicide in people with mood disorders. We are giving it to kids in 16 years and above, and sometimes also in 12 years old with special permission. If you compare lithium and valproic acid, valproate, in large-scale naturalistic study done by Gibson, other studies done by Maria Okento from New York, published in American Journal of Psychiatry, have shown that there is a protective effect, and lithium is better than valproic acid. And if you adjust it, the risk for suicide death is 2 to 7 times higher in other mood stabilizers comparing to lithium. Antipsychotics are also good. I said that clozapine is the only drug that with official indication for reducing suicidal risk psychosis. A problem is that we cannot give it to young children. It is approved for adolescents, 16 years and above, but in Israel we give it to younger children, especially if they're psychotic and suicidal. And there is a big Cochrane study that show it. However, it's not specific. And it seemed like if you give other antipsychotics, quetiapine, for example, or Zyprexa, olanzapine, they're all as good in suicide prevention. There is the spray of hope, what we called esketamine. And as I showed in my disclosures, I was a consultant to Janssen Company for this specific compound for depression and suicidality in young children. So let me say a word about this. This is how it looks like, the esketamine. And I'm going back, I'm stopping the presentation for a minute and going back to the screen. Can you see me on the screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, this is the esketamine. This is for demonstration only. And this is actually, you can see here it's 0 milligrams, but usually it's 28 milligrams, 14 milligrams to each nostril. So the way to treat person with severe depression, also adolescent, but it's not indicated yet, but it will be for depression and suicidality. Right now, only depression. Later, it will be for suicidality, is to take it, put it into the nostril, push it, 14 milligrams, and then you put in the other nostril, 14 milligrams. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. So 14 milligrams to each side, and you stay for 2 hours under supervision in the clinic. It will not be given to people at home because then they use it for parties. It makes you high. So people will take it and make big parties with ketamine. So it's not for people that use at home. It will be in clinics. The nurse will do it, and then you sit there for 2 hours because it can raise your blood pressure. That's the main danger. And if everything okay, you go home. You come twice a week, and you come once a week, and then once a month, and so on. This is the way to treat it. I hope it will be more and more common, and this is the future. I'm going back to my presentation.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you see the presentation back?
Yes, we see it well.
Good. So this is esketamine, 28 milligrams, 14 milligrams to each nostril. It's expensive. It was approved in Israel, and it's in the basket. We can give it to patients. I'm sure it will come to Russia soon. Ketamine is a potentially effective and rapid treatment for suicidal thoughts and independent of improvement of depression. So it seemed like by studies that it will help suicidality even if the adolescent is not depressed. But it's also a very good treatment for depression if you can't wait. And why can't you wait? If you give SSRI like Prozac or fluoxetine to an adolescent with depression, it will take 6 to 8 weeks until it will start working. During this period, they can kill themselves. So if they are very suicidal, we cannot wait. That's the idea behind ketamine. This is a study by my friend Mike Grunbaum from Columbia University, New York. You see that everybody's from Columbia University. This is the main place in the world for studying suicide. And you can see here, the ketamine is the red. The green one is midazolam. He compared midazolam and ketamine because he wanted to see a drug that is similar. Both of them are anesthesia drugs. And you can see the mean suicide scale for intent, suicidal intent. The score is very low with ketamine. Both of the groups started the same, very high suicidality ideation, and it goes down. Intent and ideation went down with ketamine. In the editorial in 2018, in the American Journal of Psychiatry, they say that the results clearly signal a potential for ketamine as an antidepressant and anti-suicide drug. So it seems like this is the future. ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, I know that you can't do it in all over Russia. It's not everywhere, but it's very effective treatment. But remember, there are no controlled trials that it's helping adolescents with depression and suicide. They are open label. Of course, you can't do ECT for adolescents with depression in a RCT way because you can't give electricity in the wrong spot of brain. So nobody will do a double-blind placebo control with electricity. So we don't know, but we know in open studies, head-to-head, that it's very effective for depression, suicidality, and also schizophrenia. Now I want to conclude with how we prevent suicide. Because the best treatment for suicide and also for depression is to prevent it. This is a paper we published in Lecture Psychopharmacology in 2016, summarizing all the papers on suicidality prevention in the level of a country or national level. These are the people that were joining our study, an expert from all over Europe, and we classified the evidence of 1,700 papers, 1700 papers, done in the last decade. And we classified them by effective or not effective. We put all the 17 experts in this castle in Leiden, no cars, no taxis, no buses, like in Corona times. And they had to be stuck there for a weekend. We gave them 1,700 papers, and we asked them to rate them by Oxford criteria for strength of evidence. This is the Oxford criteria. If you do a systematic review of RCTs, or you do meta-analysis, you get grade 1, the best. If you do case report on 3 cases, it will get 5, very low. And we took only 1 and 2, the highest level of evidence. And these are the results from almost 1,800 papers. We ended with 164 only that are very strong evidence. They included systematic review, meta-analysis, RCTs, cohort, and ecological. And this is the summary of what we found. It was published 2017. Everything above the red line has strong evidence, and everything below the line don't have enough evidence. And look on the right corner, treatment of depression. If there is only one thing you want to take from my talk, take this one. Early and aggressive treatment of depression in adolescents can save their lives. Don't hesitate. Don't let parents confuse you and say they don't want to give medication to their child. It's very important to give the medication for children and adolescents if they are depressed. You can give Prozac starting age 8 and above. You can give sertraline, Lustral. You can give fluvoxamine. You can give escitalopram, encitalopram. I don't care. All of them are similar in their effectiveness. Those who were proven the most are sertraline and fluoxetine, but also escitalopram was proven from 12 and above. So give SSRI to children as soon as possible. I always start with fluoxetine, 20 milligrams, and then go to 40 if it's not working, and start it early before they kill themselves. Early treatment of depression. However, it's not just pharmacotherapy. Psychotherapy is very important, especially CBT or DBT or IPT. They are all very effective for depression in adolescents and children. But the combination of pharmacotherapy and psychotherapy is the winning tool to fight depression and suicide in young people. Another point that was proven to be effective is chain of care. You have seen someone in your clinic, deliver them to the hospital and make sure they got there. If you see them in the hospital, deliver them to the clinic and make sure they got there. Don't drop them in the way. Don't let them fall between the chairs, as we say. Another strategy is school-based prevention, and I've shown you how important it is to work with schools, to teach the kids, not the teachers. Work with kids. 9th grade, 10th grade, 13, 14 years old. Give them 4 or 5 hours explanation about suicide and how important it is to treat themselves. And restriction of lethal means is very effective strategy in the level of the healthcare system. Not you in your clinic. The government have to restrict access of lethal means. If you have more guns, more killings. If you have more bridges with no fences, more killings. If you have more paracetamol at home, more killings. If you have pesticides in Russia, in rural area, the agriculture area, people have pesticides to kill germs in agriculture. And this can be serve as a very strong suicide mean. So let me show you a few pictures. Mean restriction. This is the Golden Gate in San Francisco, 100 suicides a year. And it's very dangerous, and most of the people will jump between the two towers. So the San Francisco city put a fence, but they put a fence only on one side because this is the side people jump. It's the side of San Francisco and Alcatraz jail. Everybody jumped from this side. So the Americans wanted to save money. They put the fence on this side. Guess what happened? People stopped jumping. They didn't move to the other side because they wanted to jump on this side. Once they have a fence, they stop jumping. And they also put little phone calls, booths that people can call for help. 3 kilometers from there, there's the Oakland Bridge. Same bridge, very similar, a little smaller and gray and not important and not famous. Nobody jumped from there because it's not famous. So young people like to jump from famous places with drama. And they will not move to another bridge if you put a fence on the famous bridge. So it's smart to put a fence. This is Moher Cliffs in Ireland. This is very long cliffs, and many people, young people, jump here, adolescents, young lovers. The Irish didn't have enough money to put fence all over, so they put a little sign saying, if you want to talk, call the Samaritans volunteers. 800 call, it's a free call. People start calling and stop jumping. The British did something very interesting. They limited the number of paracetamol pills in boxes that you can buy over the counter. From 30 or 50, they lowered it to 16. Since then, the death lowered by 22% by suicide, and liver transplant that was many times caused by overdose of paracetamol lowered by 30%. It's a huge money and huge fatalities. So by limiting the number of paracetamol you can buy over the counter, you can save lives. Many countries in the world moved to do it. Russia didn't, Israel not yet. I hope we will all move to this strategy because young people love paracetamol. They believe, they know, they read in the internet, they know it's dangerous. This is some strategic changes in hospitals, putting showers that you cannot hang yourself on, and we did the same in Israel. This is something we did in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Army. You can see over the years, in 2016, in 2006, the Israeli government and the Israeli army decided not to give guns to soldiers who go home for vacation. Since then, the suicide rates went down dramatically. And the reason is, if you don't have a gun, even if you think about suicide, you don't have means to kill yourself. Let's say a few words about neuroscience of suicide for those of you who are doing research. So first of all, the suicidal brain is different from normal brain. And David Brand and Turecki have shown in the Lancet in 2015. They summarized all the papers. Some of them our best friend did, even one of them I did. And you can see there are lots of proofs that the normal brain is not the suicidal brain. Suicidal brain has altered FHT1A and 2A receptors of serotonin, increased GABA A receptors, increased NMDA receptor, lots of changes, decreased serotonin reuptake in the midbrain and so on. So the suicidal brain is different. This is a paper by Jolan from Paris, and you can see that there are reduced volumes of caudate and putamen in individuals with and without family history of suicide, and it has very nice correlation with mental pain and history of aggression in adolescents. So the brain is different. There are lots of genetics in suicide, and you can see that both depression and suicide runs in families, but suicide may run in family independent of depression. You can have suicidality without depression in adolescents. It's interesting. And monozygotics are 13 times more in risk for suicide than dizygotic. We did a pilot study and we did a genome-wide association study using chips of DNA by Affymetrix. We published in 2014. We found about 14 markers for suicidality in brains of suicide victims. This is a very important study, important not just for our topic, but in general. This was done by Avshalom Caspi in the UK, and it was published in Science in 2003. You can see on the left corner that he have shown that if you have the short allele of serotonin transporter promoter gene, together with more than 4 life events, the probability that you will be depressed or commit suicide is very high. If you have the long allele, is protective even if you have 4 life events. So this study, and the upper left showing the same on depression symptoms, the right is probability of major depression episode, and the right lower one is the informant reports of depression, which is the parent. It's replicated again and again that short allele of serotonin transporter promoter gene, the short allele, together with life events, will put at risk for depression and suicide. This is the first ever proof of gene-environment interaction in depression. Gene-environment interaction in depression. We talk about it for years. We saw that the Engel model of stress diathesis model. We talk about it for years. Now there is a scientific proof over 1,000 cases from New Zealand by Caspi, showing that if you have a specific gene and bad environment, you will be more depressed and even more suicidal. This was replicated by us. This is a paper Rice in American Journal of Psychiatry 2006, and we have shown the same. The red ones are with the S allele, and we measure the severity of life events in a subjective way, not objective way, which is more important, I think. And we used another allele found by Nakamura from Japan, and we have shown the same. Having the short allele and bad life will cause more depression. This is depression, not suicide. This is a Hamilton Depression Rating Scale. However, in 2009, Rish et al. In the JAMA did 14 studies meta-analysis and shown the odds ratio is 1, meaning Caspi was wrong, and it's not true that the serotonin transporter gene and environment are causing depression. They didn't include our study because we used another allele, a third allele. However, a little later in 2011, in the archives, there was a paper by Katya Karg, a very young person, who did a meta-analysis, revisited and found that it is very strong correlation. Look at these correlations. Look at these p-values. 0.007, 0.004, 0.002. This is a very strong probability that she is right. She included 54 studies, including our study, and shown that there is a connection between the short allele of serotonin transporter promoter gene and stressful life event causing depression in children, adolescents, and young adults. We added the timing, as I told you before, the gene, environment, gender, timing, and the interaction. I published a monograph on this in 2010. And this was based on works by Jay Gid that have shown, and this is his slide with permission, that the gray matter is changing during development. We thought that the brain is finishing development very early, but it seemed like the normal human brain is developing until age 22. And for your honor and sake, I didn't show what happened to your brain after age 22. But believe me, it's not good news. So the brain creating a lot of gray matter. This is the frontal gray matter. And at age 12 or 13, it will cut it down and make it better. This is called pruning. This process is not happening normally in adolescents with depression and suicide. And if you look here, you can understand that if a life event meets you when you are 6 or 12 or 16, it meets a different brain in different phase of development. This is why timing is important. Timing is important not just by how brain is built, also by how the brain is functioning. You can see here this slide from Jay Gid. You can see that at age 12, when I show you a frightening face in the functional MRI, your amygdala will shine up. If I do the same at age 22, your frontal lobe will work. This is a summary of studies by Casey, and you can see the amygdala is working hard in adolescents comparing to adults or young people. This is the summary of everything. This is actually a wonderful explanation why adolescents are so difficult to treat, even they are normal. Normal adolescents, have adolescent turmoil, a big mess in their life. And look why. The subcortical region, meaning amygdala, is well developed. The prefrontal region, the frontal lobe, is not developed. It will be developed only later in life. This is the last part that will go through pruning, only at age 22 or 23. And the difference between lots of emotions from the amygdala with little breaks from the prefrontal cortex will make adolescents age of risk. That's why, say Casey, adolescents have more depression, have more schizophrenia, and more suicide, and more sexual behavior, and more substance abuse, and so on. It's a dangerous period of development. We try to prove our thoughts about gene-environment interaction and timing using the Wistar-Kyoto rat model. This rat is very depressed. It doesn't like to eat well. It doesn't sleep well. It's very anxious, and it's genetically depressed. The Wistar-Kyoto is depressed. The Wistar is normal. So we have a normal strain, the Wistar, and the Kyoto strain, which is depressed. And we published a paper in 2015 that is also cited in lots of textbook now, and we published in the ECNP journal, the European Neuropsychopharmacology, in 2015, and we have shown a little nice, elegant study. We took the Kyoto, the depressed genetically, and the Wistar, and we exposed them to stress in childhood, which is 27 days, in adolescence, another group, which is 44 days, and we didn't express for any stress at age 58, which is adults. So we have 6 groups of, we did it for females and then for males. So we have 6 groups for each gender. With genetics, without genetics, with stress, without stress, early stress, and late stress. So if we compare all of them together, we can find the interaction, the 3 ways interaction. After we finished the study, we did MRI. We have rats MRI in Tel Aviv University. It looks like a little washing machine. We put them in, and we looked on their brain. These are the results. You can look on this slide later because it's very difficult to read from the screen. However, I simplified this for you in a little cartoon. So the right side is the worst scenario, and the left side is the best scenario. The worst outcome will be if you are a Kyoto rat with bad genes. You are genetically depressed. together with stressful life event. I did the stress for you. And I did it very early in childhood, in 27 days old, which is like 5 years old for children. You will be very depressed as adult. If you have the genes for depression and you have stressful life event, but in adolescence, you're a little better. You're still very depressed in adulthood, but a little better. If you have bad genes and good life, a little better. If you don't have the gene for suicide at all, you're the Wistar rat, and you have bad life early timing, a little better. If you have good genes, bad life in adolescence, a little better. But the best outcome is to have good genes and good life. And this little photo, I mean the daughter, not the father. And it means that a Wistar rat with good genes, with no stressful life event at all, will not be depressed as adult. This is a nice way to show gene, environment, timing interaction in development of depression in children, adolescents, and young adults. So what are my messages? Suicidal behavior is not rare after puberty. Completed suicide is rare and hard to predict. Risk assessment and recording is essential. Psychotherapy, including SSRI, lithium, clozapine, ECT, and maybe esketamine, may be effective for depression and suicidality. SSRIs are not causing more completed suicide, so it's important to give SSRIs. Don't stop giving SSRIs to depression adolescents. You may save lives. And the black box warning was wrong. All the studies have shown those who stopped giving SSRIs cause more suicide. Maybe that's why the rate of suicide in America is rising so quickly. Give SSRIs to depressed adolescents, especially if they are suicidal. Of course, monitor them closely because it may cause some akathisia and a little irritability. Animal model prove gene environment timing interaction in depression, and I've shown you this interaction on rat studies. Prevention in the national level is effective, and there is a connection, and compassion are critical. Be in contact with your patients, talk to them, even in Corona time. Use Zoom, use FaceTime, use Skype, talk to your patients, see them, talk to them, be connected to them, call them by phone, because having a good connection to one significant other, which may be you, can save lives. So remember compassion and give a good therapy. I want to end with a little clip, even if you don't hear the voice, the sound. Oh, I think we have to move to another. Oh, you can see me. Maybe you can hear me now. You can see the clip. Let's hear this one.
There was one individual involved. She was 28-year-old Sarah Wilson. Sarah left a note before leaving her house because she had decided to take her own life. But I'm very pleased to tell you, she didn't go through with it because someone took the time to stop and talk to her. That was all it took to interrupt Sarah's suicidal thoughts. I know this because I am Sarah. I'm sharing my story today to spread an important message. That a little small talk can be all it takes to help start someone on a journey to recovery. So if you think someone might need help, trust your instincts. Stop and have a chat. Even a question about the weather can be enough. Or tell a member of staff. You could help save a life.
Okay, so I hope you saw this little clip. This clip was done by Sarah Wilson, which is a very nice young woman who attempted suicide and was trying to kill herself in the subway. And she did it. She did this little clip and fighting suicide. And I think it's very important, especially to show that a contact of person to person is very important.